I've been banned over 20 times on TikTok.
Hey, Nick. Thank you for joining us. What's the future of America? Is this the beginning of something social unrest which could lead to a civil war?
It almost feels a little surreal to say yes in a way, because I feel like a lot of people have the thought that they're like, yeah, we need to have a civil war. We need to fight this on both sides of the aisle. A lot of people are actually willing to do that. However, I think a civil war, if you will, lack of better terms, can come based off of if something actually starts to affect Americans in a more direct way beyond just social media anger.
There is nothing more stupid than a goy sitting here defending a state that allowed Epstein.
You're right.
You agree that you're on the forefront of a war? Is that correct? Like a social war? Is this something for the fight for truth? Is that what you would describe this?
It certainly feels that way.
Oh, well, let me ask you, why do you support Israel if you're not Jewish?
You don't have to be what? Are you Palestinian?
I think there's a separation between what we see on social media and what we feel like in real life. And sometimes I need to remind myself of that situation, that this isn't real life. But yes, on social media, it certainly does feel that way.
And are these people malicious or they're ignorant?
Yeah, but you didn't answer my question.
It's the
I
same
mentioned
exact
why,
answer.
because they should be freed. No. I support Palestine because they're being genocided and they need to be freed from this genocide. And they are predominantly Muslim brothers and they are good people.
Right. And you
So
didn't.
that's I gave you clear evidences. I
Right.
gave you clear examples why I support Palestine. Why do you
Right.
support Israel?
Right. So that's not what you originally asked. That's your new question. Your original question is, why do I do it if I'm not Jewish? So if your new question is, why do I support Israel, period, right? My answer is that I think they should be freed from terrorism and terroristic state and IRGC proxy group.
I think the more we get away from the start of the conflict, obviously the conflict with Israel-Palestine has been going on, but I'm talking about specifically the context of what we're in today, October 7th and post-October 7th. The further away we get from October 7th, the more people become malicious versus just ignorant, or as many people say, useful idiots, because they are virtue signaling and they're going to move on to whatever their next trend is, which is going to leave behind those that are just straight up malicious, if you will.
Doesn't meet the
You've
Dole
seen Gaza
specialis.
today, and have you seen it 2023, right? They're cutting off the food supply, cutting off the water supply. They have kept on shooting after the ceasefire. They've made it clear they want to expand to greater Israel. They want to ethnically cleanse them, destroy
Who's
the
they?
land. It's been completely destroyed. The Jewish Zionists controlling Israel.
October 7th, right? Was that a bet that Hamas and Iran made that the world would react exactly as they're reacting right now? Was that their bet?
Yes and no. I think they actually overestimated, their own bet. I think it's been all but proven, although there's more investigation to come about, that Hamas specifically, and yes, of course, being a proxy of Iran, them as well, they believe that the world, including the surrounding Arab nations, would actually react differently than they did. Other than Hezbollah's launches on October 8th, they actually thought Iran was going to get involved right away. They thought the entire Arab world would get involved together. Hamas even, I think, considered occupying parts of the Negev desert for months. So I don't think October 7th went exactly the way they did. However, Sinwar, Yahya specifically, I think there was a mastermind behind him that goes all the way back to his time in prison in Israel. When they removed the tumor out of his head, he studied not just, Hebrew. Not only could he speak that, he studied Jewish theology, he studied the history of Israel and how the Jewish people thought. And so I think there's an extent that I'm sure he did absolutely consider that October 7th would be a domino effect into the downfall of Israel, specifically by the international community turning their backs against Israel instead of putting the blame on Hamas. And I'd say to an extent he did nail that. I don't think he nailed it as well as he thought it would be. I do think he underestimated how much of a trend the Free Palestine movement is and how much people virtue signal when they support, quote unquote, Palestine. And also he underestimated how quickly, especially people in the West, move on to the next topic. That doesn't mean that they become pro-Israel again. And I think it's a concern that Israel needs to look at and needs to consider for the future. But I don't see it as something that's going to actually take any fervor.
Well, look what's happening in Iran they're killing their own citizen. In Sudan, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but I see that there are other things going on in the world. And like when you interviewed your famous interview with Sneeko, I mean, he was just listing a list, a long laundry list of grievances that he had against the Jews. He started, and that process of anti-Semitism and using Zionism as an excuse for that is, to me, it didn't seem like if you just explained to him the argument that people would just say, okay, I get it. You're right. It doesn't seem like it's an argument that could be won because there's no really guardrails to this argument.
You don't win over the person that you're speaking to, in which case for me it was literally Sneeko. You win over the arguments of the people that don't comment, the people that aren't, in the comment section, the people that aren't in the comment sections of later clips you see where this YouTube video, Nick Matau destroys Sneeko. There's a lot of people that don't actually end up commenting. If you can raise a certain even doubt in people's minds, then that's a win. For me, I've always said, and I've already accomplished my goal with my advocacy for Israel. I've already accomplished it years ago. I told myself if I can just change one person's mind, everything after that's a bonus. And I have. Since October 7th alone, I've been advocating for Israel for 5.5 years now. But even since October 7th, I've had about 36 people come up to me who were, I'm not talking about people who are like kind of on the fence. These are people that were very pro-Palestinian. Some of them used to even come up and argue with me on a daily, that are now pro-Israel. So everything after that is a bonus. So I'm not speaking to the Sneekos of the world or the Myron Gaines, who I also had a debate with. I'm speaking to the people that can use people like Sneeko, Myron Gaines, whoever, to make the argument. And I want that person who's listening to say, I've heard that argument before. And then Nick Matau comes in and I counter it and they go, that's interesting. Maybe they agree with me, but if at minimum all they do is think it's a more complex situation, that's a win for me.
I've heard stories locally in schools in Israel of kids who are religious kids, religious families, but are on social media and they're just taught, they have a anti-Israel mentality and they don't even realize it because they are so influenced, meaning that there seems to be a poison. And do you believe that there is a fuel to this poison, or is it just, the nature of the algorithm that seeks out, if you say it's going to be a nice day tomorrow, nobody's watching that video,
Yeah, I think social media I think the algorithms are purposely made that way because I remember when I was younger, when I was like a teenager, early 20s, when Facebook was the popular social media, there was an article that came out. And I remember they said that Facebook purposely made their algorithm to have opposition to your views. The reason they did that is because they did a study and found people would be on the app or Facebook, the website, more when they were arguing than they would be if they saw things they already agreed with, which that makes sense, right? We're going to be more inclined to, it's the same thing with like when someone wants to review a business. You're going to be more likely to go on to Yelp and say, hey, I had a bad time because, something bad happened, than you are to be like, hey, I had a good enough time. This was a nice restaurant. Some people might go on and take their time, but more people are going to be more likely to respond to something negative or something they don't agree with. And I think that algorithm, especially on X, but that algorithm across social media is designed to get us to stay on the app more because in the end, it's a business. They want to make money. They want more appetizers. And how are they going to get that? They need to get the world to be in a negative downward spiral. That's why when people go and outside and actually talk with people, even those that may disagree with them, it doesn't feel like a comment section on Instagram because it's not. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think we shouldn't be worried about the obvious increase of anti-Semitism. That doesn't mean I don't think that Israel shouldn't be worried about their obvious failures in their PR. What I'm saying is that I think there's a difference between the doom we see on social media and what exists in real life.
Well, do you think that if AI right now controls the algorithm, meaning like, have you ever had interactions with AI and you felt that AI itself is biased?
Yeah, of course, all the time.
Okay. So an AI right now, YouTube is making a change in their policy and they've publicly announced that AI analyzes videos. Have you ever been flagged by YouTube on content I'm just asking for things that they deem to be hateful?
No, there's only one time I've ever gotten flagged. I don't think it was for that. I don't even remember because they ended up removing it. I did have my Instagram completely removed. This was about a month or two ago. They completely removed it. I never had a warning. All of a sudden, I wake up one day and my Instagram, 230,000 followers, just gone. And it took almost 3 weeks to get the whole thing back. It was insane. Like literally, no warnings, no removed videos, no strikes, nothing. Good standing account, and they just removed it at the blink of an eye. And it if I didn't have some of the connections I had, because I go on my wife's account and post, and it goes viral because everyone really knows me on Instagram, and they're just like, I made a video saying, "Hey, if you're seeing this is on my wife's account. I've been banned," and so I had a lot of people reach out to me, people who are even friends like the CEO. And even then, it still took 3 weeks to get the account back. I would not have gotten the account back if I didn't even have that, and it's kind of insane if you think about it. Because again, I never even had a warning, let alone a strike on my account.
So is that fear within you? Do you think that I personally believe that it's quite possible that the control could be just left to public opinion, that if AI
Yep.
feels public opinion will be anti-Semitic, they will promote anti-Semitic content.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with you. And for me, will it make a difference? No, I will always come back because I do feel that this is a mission that I have to fight regardless of. Now, that doesn't mean I don't take precautions, but even at the risk of, I guess, my safety, this isn't something I can just let go. I've been banned over 20 times on TikTok. I just come back. Do I like it? No, but it's not anything that's going to deter me away from, fighting for not just the Jewish people as someone who's not Jewish or Israel as someone who's not Israeli. I think it goes beyond just the Jewish people and Israel. It goes on to Western civilization. We have an entire history. What happens to civilizations when they start to demonize and scapegoat the Jews? It never works out for the civilization. I've even done studies on like the Spanish Inquisition and post that, when the Spain entered its golden age. Every historian agrees that the kicking out of the Jewish people or forcing them to conversion to Catholicism, it actually caused a domino effect that into the 1600s. Now that's over 100 years later. That downfall can be traced all the way back to the 1492 decree when they kicked out the Jewish people. A lot of their professionals, economic standards, a lot of that stuff had a downfall turn. That the first domino that was pushed was that 1492 decree and the Inquisition as a whole. But that's just one example. You can look at throughout all of history, the demonizing of the Jews leads to the downfall of society. I don't want my society to have a downfall. And the Jewish people, when I'm speaking about America specifically, the Jewish people go all the way back to the founding of this country. In fact, a lot of the reasons that we are the country we are today is specifically because of prominent Jewish people. And so I think it's very clear that it's a fight that goes beyond just Jewish people. It's a fight that goes also to my society, my people, and beyond.
So would you agree that American Jewry, look, European Jewry has pretty much been cleaned out, either technically or they've moved to other countries. There's pockets of Jews around the world, but many of the Arab countries have almost no Jews left in them, and they completely don't even have flights going in there. So how do you see from history, and you probably know history much better than I do, how do you see the American future for American Jewry? I mean, are they going to start migrating more towards Israel? Because half the Jews have already come to Israel, the biggest pockets on the East Coast, I think.
I think that depends on how America decides to wake up or not. If we don't learn from the faults of Europe, and just to be frank and direct with you, I'm talking about the invasion of cultures that are antithetical to the West, Islamist cultures, and stuff like that. Europe ignored that warning sign a long time ago, and we're seeing the downfall of that. If America decides to do the same, I don't know what they will do. Maybe people can look at Europe and say we shouldn't have that happen here. In some
Yeah,
cases, we're not waking up when you look at certain places like Dearborn and even New York City increasingly. And so if we don't wake up from that, then yes, the exact same thing will happen to America that's happening to Europe. And of course, it's going to lead to the exodus of Jewish people in the country.
I heard you had early on the show, you were saying that Jews shouldn't vote, so we lose the Democratic vote. So, like, how did Mamdani?
That wasn't me. That was my friend, actually, the guy that's
That
up
was
there.
funny. And but like, how did Mamdani get elected? I mean, he is a Shia 12er Muslim. That means he believes in the Mahdi crawling out of the well. I'm pretty much sure that that's his belief. At least it was on the day that he was elected. I saw that on his wiki. Although a couple hours later, it was gone.
Yeah.
So, so like, how did he get?
Yeah, Mamdani got elected. He got elected because, unfortunately, people care. And this includes some Jews, to be honest, a lot of Jews, actually, for that matter. People care a little bit more about their left-wing ideology and politics than they do about their own people or their own country. And unfortunately, like what is famously said, if America ever falls, it's going to be from the inside. It's never going to be from the outside.
I don't think there's an army in the world that is as just. And Israel is super, super sensitive to this topic because we have been exiled and we have been tortured and we have gone through a Holocaust. Like, there were other people who were in the Holocaust. It wasn't just Jews. But I think if you take the collective history of the Jewish people, we have been persecuted in every place we've ever been because we didn't have a land. And now that we have a land, we're being persecuted once again because we're being accused of the very crimes that were done to us. And the hypocrisy of this is either the guy's nuts or like, what's really driving this? I think that really gets back to my first question, is like, what is anti-Semitism today? Now that it's not just the Jews, now it's the land. So what is this?
Anti-Semitism takes on the form that it needs to thrive. The Jewish people are a big target in society because the Jewish people, especially for her size, are an incredible force for the world. I mean, the Jewish people, when you ask people who don't know anything about the Jewish demographic in the world, you ask them how many Jews are in the world, you get 1 billion, 500 million, right? It's because of the impact the Jewish people have in the world, which of course is a testament to the Torah, right? The Torah is speaking of them being a light amongst the nations. I think there's a lot of things in the Torah that, interestingly enough, we could actually find the answers to why the world is one way or the other when we just actually, calm down a little bit and actually read the Torah. It's incredible how much the Torah actually knows. And so when you look at the Jewish people's impact on the world, it makes sense why you'd want to attack them if you have a nefarious feeling towards the West. It's what I would do if I was anti-Western and I wanted to get rid of it. Now, to answer your question, what's pushing it? When you look at things like the Muslim Brotherhood's 100-year plan, right? We're about halfway through that. The 100-year plan with the Muslim Brotherhood is not classic jihad. It's specifically jihad, the struggle of the Muslim people, right, to actually infiltrate and attack the politics and the universities and the schools. You can't tell me it's a big coincidence that you see groups like CARE, who forefronted and pushed for Mamdani to get in office, amongst other groups. You have NIAC, right? These are all Islamist organizations. CARE, in 2 states that I know of, I think it's only 2 right now, Florida and Texas, is labeled as a terrorist organization. This should be a federal mandate. CARE should be absolutely wiped out and labeled as a terrorist organization. They were an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation in 2008, where they found that pro-Palestinian organizations that were getting funding for humanitarian aid, well, it turns out it was actually going to terrorist organizations. And CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator in that case. Why haven't we looked more into that as the federal government? NIAC, you have other people funding Tucker Carlson to start podcasts like Malik, right? And then you have, of course, Qatar. Past 20 to 25 years, they have spent on average $250 million per year every single year into our university systems. Last year or 2 years ago, they spent, I think it was like $700 million into our university system. They are by far the biggest funders. And I know everyone watching this already knows that, but maybe what they don't know is this is historically what every dictator, bad leader, if you will, for lack of better terms, has done. Who do they target? They target the universities every single time. Why? Because universities are the youngest adults, which means they are also the dumbest adults. They're the most, impressionable adults because they're the youngest. So you want to attack something that still has power, aka adults, but you also want to go after the ones that are the most easy to move. They're not an unmovable force. That's the universities. And so when you mix in the algorithm of university funding, politicians, lobbyist groups like CARE, NIAC, etc. When you mix this all in, of course, the equation is going to equal anti-Semitism, anti-Western, red-green alliance, red-green black alliance. If you really think about it, you have these Marxist, communists. You got them mixing up and going with these Islamist groups who would have nothing in common with each other than they're anti-Western. Now you have mix in some neo-Nazism and some far right-wing groups. And these are three groups that literally have nothing in common with each other, and yet they're forming an alliance.
So what you mentioned previously, you're a Noahide, and
Yeah.
what I believe what that means is that you have the faith of the Jewish people, but you haven't joined their religion in a certain sense. That you believe in their,
okay.
or
I
maybe
guess
you,
that's an easy way to put it. It's I follow the 7 laws of Noah. I believe in the Torah, the Tanakh is my book, but I'm not Jewish, so I wouldn't follow the commandments, or I'm not under the covenant of the Jewish people, if you will.
right. So there is an idea perhaps that the Jewish people should be more proactive in teaching the Torah to the world, meaning the 7 Noahide laws. And the Jewish people have unfortunately been persecuted, that the thought of a Jew or a rabbi speaking to Christians or to Muslims in the history of Judaism's exiles for 2,000 years was absurd. That somebody would have a microphone and be able to speak to 1 million people as a Jewish rabbi, and they could agree or disagree, but at least hear his argument. So I was wondering what you thought about this idea of creating a advocacy from Israel, directly from their government, meaning that there is an official department which deals with outreach, just like I guess there is a ambassador to Israel, but I'm saying, but using this as teaching Torah, as teaching the 7 Noahide laws, or teaching ethics to the world. Do you think that such a thing is absurd, or just I'm nuts?
No, I think that one of the commandments is to be a light amongst the nations, and there is a lot of Jewish communities who have closed themselves off. I'm not saying I blame them, because like you said, the massive amount of persecution is apparent. However, the commandments are the commandments from God, period. The commandments aren't, take them as you feel. If you're feeling too much persecution, don't worry about this commandment. Now, there's also a lot of great religious organizations than the Jewish people, like Chabad, who I know have definitely, they helped me, even though they knew I was a Gentile. And this was before I was even really doing advocacy. And I got to tell you, Chabad, they helped me when I was in Hawaii and I was a United States Navy sailor. I went into this this building, because I saw this little Hanukkah, little tiny one at the corner of a window. And I walked in just out of curiosity, because at this point I was starting to learn about, the Jewish people in Israel, but I wasn't popular enough to anyone would have known me. And I go in, hi. Yeah, hi. I go in and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're closing on Shabbat. Please come in, have some food." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not Jewish. You guys enjoy yourself." And that doesn't matter. Come on in, right? And so I think that's an incredible thing. I think that plants a lot of seeds. So to answer your question, no, I think it's an incredible idea. To heal the world is more than just help people that are in literal pain or that need help in a physical way. It's also, the souls that we're talking about of the world. And I would love for everyone to follow. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased here. I would love everyone to follow the Noahide covenant and the commands. So I think it's a great idea. I would say start, for me to be a light amongst the world. A light is strongest in the darkest areas, right? A little candle, if I were to light it right now, you wouldn't be able to see it. But if I was in pitch black, a little candle actually can make a very big difference in a pitch black room. And so I would start with the souls, if you will, those that probably need it the most. So maybe like those that aren't religious, that by any means they don't believe in God. If their heart is still open, I'd say start with people like that before maybe this idea of like trying to preach to, like you said, Christians or Muslims. But I do understand your point about how in history, especially, the idea of like, yeah, rabbis preaching to Christians or even Muslims. Yeah, I see your point. I don't think that would be possible in history.
What do you think Israel's biggest failing is right now?
Man, that's quite the question. What is Israel's biggest failing? Do you mean I'm Israel or do you mean the state of Israel?
I meant the state of Israel, but I think both are true. Both are good questions.
The state of Israel's biggest failing. Man, that's really tough to answer actually. I would say Israel needs to start to be a little bit more proactive or a lot a bit more proactive. I think there's a lot of problems that are boiling over. We've mentioned some in this podcast. PR, for example, they need to get more ahead of stuff and not be so reactive. And then you also have what's going on with the religious communities and the draft, military service. You have a lot of arguments from both sides. One side saying, we're not going to have a country if you don't fight for it. The other side saying we are fighting for it, but in our own way, and that's not military service. I'm not here to determine. I'm not here to say that I have any say in that battle. What I am here to say, though, is that there's a very clear detriment happening. When I was in Israel just a couple months ago, I see Jerusalem, which is my favorite city in the world. When I'm in Jerusalem, there's something that happens to me that I just become so calm. My wife literally says, every time we're in Jerusalem, your entire shoulders and everything relax. And it's impossible to not feel calm in Jerusalem. And I always make it a point when I get into Israel, I feel something every time I land in Israel and I'm in that Ben Gurion airport. And I see that ramp. But there's something that pulls me to Jerusalem so much stronger when I'm in Israel than where I'm at right now, like California. Because I feel like it's because I'm so close that there's something really just like I need to get to Jerusalem. I always have to go within the first day. I have to get to Jerusalem. Uh, when I see the state of Jerusalem and I see something like 30+%, I believe, of the people aren't working there. A lot of it is, I think there is something that there needs to be a balance when you see that how societies have to act in today's day and age. There has to be an economy. That's the world we live in. But then you also have to balance that with what you as an individual feel is your mission in the world. I don't know the answer, so I'm sorry to be so vague. But what I do see is that there is a balance that needs to happen. And right now it feels like that balance is not happening between the economy of specifically Jerusalem, but I guess that affects Israel as a whole, and people's beliefs and what they need to do from a religious standpoint.
Well, this argument, I agree, it's a difficult question. In fact, the prophet Ezekiel describes the sticks of Judah and Joseph coming together. Jerusalem and Tel Aviv have always been, it was just used to be called Jerusalem and Shomron. There was
Right.
the 10 tribes were exiled from the Shomron, and there was a wicked king there who built a temple there for the Baal, and they had a temple there for idol worship. And this separation within the Jews has always been Israel's biggest weakness, of the fact that we have both Jews are successful in many different things. There's a joke: a Jewish guy goes in with his Cadillac, he goes into the car wash, and the Gentiles over there say, cheap Jew, he's not going to give us a tip. He's not giving us a tip. And then at the end of the car wash, he gives them $100 to each one of the guys. He says, damn Jew's got all the money in the world.
I haven't heard that one before. I think that with disagreement between Jews, I think it depends actually. So, in terms of the splinter between Jews is as old as the Torah itself. It's problematic, and it leads to a lot of things in Jewish history that has led to problems. However, I also think it's where, from an outsider's perspective, it's your strength. It depends on how you guys disagree, right? Because Jewish people have been able to do wonders for the world that others have not even been able to dream of, that Jews figure out. I think a lot of that does come from the idea of disagreeing with each other, because if you disagree correctly and in a proper and good faith way, disagreement is what leads us to have way more knowledge than we are even capable of. Even the smartest person disagreeing with someone that's half their intelligence will lead the smarter person to still come up with ideas that they couldn't come up with on their own. So I think it depends.
As a rabbi, I'll share with you my rabbinic idea of this is that when the Jews sold Joseph into slavery, and the brothers came and Judah came to him, and Judah was like, we sold you into slavery. He reveals himself to them. Now he's the king of Egypt. And the brothers are so ashamed. And he says, guys, don't worry. He says, L'michya shalchani. God sent me into exile for a reason. I'm here for a reason. I'm here to be able to provide for Egypt. And they started to provide for Egypt. And eventually, after 210 years, they became enslaved in that culture until the Mashiach, or the Goel, or the Redeemer, Moses, came and redeemed them and promised them this land. And from that point until today, the Jews have never successfully returned, because when they tried to go in, there were still 2.5 tribes who said the tribe of Gad and another tribe, and the tribe of Reuben, and half of the tribe of Manasseh said, we want our portion on the other side of the river. And from that point on, we have still not all returned. All the Jews have not returned. And that's kind of the return of the Jewish people to the land, as described in Ezekiel 36 and 37, is what fuels and starts Gog Magog. When people see that these prophecies are being fulfilled, then, and I think the word Gog Magog might be frightening to many people, but I think from a Jewish perspective, it just represents, it mentions Paras, which is Persia, which is modern day Iran. So it's clearly mentioned it, but it just what it really represents is, how do people see the return of the Jewish people to their land, and how do they see this? Do they see it through the lens of genocide, or do they see this through the lens of fulfillment of prophecy? And both of those options are available out there for anybody who wants to believe either way. While I agree with your arguments, some people are not convinced. They still want to believe, because in the age of social media, you can really just believe everything. So that's what I say. That's my understanding from a rabbinic point of view. I will just caveat that there are many rabbis who would disagree with me. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Oh, really? Rabbis disagreeing with each other? I've never heard that.
Yeah. Nothing anybody rabbi tells you is absolute, except for...
Yeah, for
but
sure.
That's what makes Judaism so beautiful, because we want to have all these opinions, and we want to get to the truth. And unless you let people talk, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm in 100% agreement with you. I think, like, as an outsider, I think I can offer a unique perspective that to Jewish people that obviously Jewish people can't see because they're from inside the house. And when I look at what a lot of people, when they do appreciate Jewish people from an outside point of view, from the Gentiles, a lot of the times they appreciate, hey, Jews are very successful people. Jews are very smart. Jews create a lot of this technology and that antibiotic and this and that. And don't get me wrong, I agree with them, of course. But when I look at the Jewish people, what impresses me the most about them, the thing that separates the Jewish people from me in an incredible way, is the Torah. The people will ask me, "Hey, Nick, you're like a Jewish supremacist? Why? Yeah, why do you like the Jews so much? Blah 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 blah. Why do you defend them?" And I say, it's not. I never believe that somebody is better simply because their skin color is this or that, or their name is this or that, or gender is this or that. But culture can absolutely be a benefit to the world. It could be a detriment, or it could be neutral. And the Torah and what it's done for the world is something I can't compare anything else to. And so that's what I recognize about the Jewish people. To go back to what you earlier said about, should Jews do more to spread the Torah? Of course, the answer is yes. And I think that, what are you doing? I think that's apparent, because the Torah is something that can help anyone. And so naturally, the more the Torah spreads, the better it is for the world. And I think that's the whole reason the Torah was given to the world, is because the Torah is our blueprints as mankind. It's what the world is and what the world needs to be before whatever the after is, whatever one believes. I think there is an after regardless of who you are. And the world can't do that until the world is set up for that timeline.
I think the biggest Congress, actually the first Congress of Noahides, will be November 2nd in Israel. It'll be I think over 100 countries represented. The Rabbi Uri Shirky is the person running it. I think his name is. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, a lot of people have been telling me, they're like, Nick, you're the most famous Noahide in the world. You need to come to this. November 2nd. Yeah, I'm trying to. It's just a little tough for
You
me
need
to
a
get
place
out.
to stay. You can stay. You can stay with me in Beit Shemesh. I got a place. You can do your
Incredible.
podcast here. So
there you go. I can, because
yeah.
every time I go to Israel, everyone loves it, but at the same time, people are like, "But I miss your podcast."
Well, you could do some lives. My parents live in the old city of Jerusalem, overlooking the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. And yeah,
Incredible.
and we really lucked out. We really lucked out. And when I go up on the roof with people, with guests, and we look down at the Temple Mount, I'm reminded of 1967 when Matau went up there and he said, the Temple Mount's in our hand, and the first thing he did was create the Western Wall Heritage Foundation and hand it over to the Waqf. So and the Jews are afraid of redemption. They don't want to see they don't want to see anything happening on that mountain. And when, like I've heard people say, when people talk about what's going to happen on the Temple Mountain, it's pretty clear. Ezekiel 40 through 48 is the blueprints of the third temple. But one thing people don't realize is that it's not going to be forced on anybody. Meaning the end times for the Jewish people looks like the whole world coming together and saying, hey, we want to be a part of this. And I think that's kind of what the Noahide movement is that, we want to be on this side of history, because right now we are writing the final chapter of the Bible.
Right. I literally make that joke with my wife all the time. Well, it's not a joke. It's true. I was like, it's kind of interesting when you see certain things happen in the Holy Land, especially. And it's like, when you see it happen, you think to yourself, if you fast forward 2,000 years and someone was reading the chapter of the Bible on this, that would be included. You know what I mean? Like that person would be included. That thing, that action, that event would be included. So it's very interesting to consider that.
Okay, final thoughts, Nick, and maybe give us a blessing.
Oh man, I'm not in any position to bless anyone. Listen, my final thoughts is that, I know it sounds a little cliche, but I truly believe in it and it gives me strength. So if it gives me strength, there must be something to it, is to truly trust in God. I know I do. I don't always know what God wants. Not a prophet, not anyone who has dreams or anything, but I try my best to, I won't say do what God wants me to do, but not be resistant to what God puts in front of me. And it makes me a happier and better person by just, doing my best to not be resistant to anything God puts in front of me. I don't believe that God gives us what we need, or let me rephrase that. God doesn't do for us what we need to do, but God gives us what we need so we can do it ourselves. And I think a lot of people sometimes need to stop waiting for God to just do it for us and realize that God has already given us everything we need. It's just about knowing how to use those tools. And with that, that's I think that will apply to Israel as a state. It will apply to Israel as Am Yisrael, and it'll even apply to the Gentiles and the Noahides around the world.
Okay, Nick, thank you so much. It's amazing what chicken soup could do. You definitely look like you're feeling much better now.
I do feel a little bit better, yeah.
Thank you so much for taking your time. I really appreciate it. And shalom from the holy city of Beit Shemesh.
Shalom. Thank you.